For more than 4 decades, the man responsible for at least 13 murders, more than 50 rapes, and over 100 burglaries across California walked free, known to investigators only by a string of different names. Because for years, nobody realized the crimes across 3 separate decades and jurisdictions were committed by the same person. He was finally identified not by a fingerprint, a confession, or an informant, but by a genealogy website designed to help people find distant cousins. This is the Reckoning Files. Beginning in the mid-1970s, a series of burglaries in the suburbs of Sacramento County escalate into something far worse. Starting in 1976, a man investigators nicknamed the East Area Rapist begins breaking into homes at night, often while residents are asleep, and sexually assaulting women, sometimes binding male partners and threatening children in the next room. Over the next 2 years, more than 40 attacks are linked to the same offender across Sacramento and neighboring counties. Then, starting in 1979, a similar pattern of home invasion attacks begins appearing 500 miles south in Santa Barbara, Ventura, Orange, and other Southern California counties. Except now, some of the attacks turn fatal. Investigators there call the offender the original Night Stalker, after a distinctive knot used to bind victims. For over 2 decades, nobody connects the two. It would take DNA evidence, decades of dead ends, and a website built for hobbyist genealogists, not law enforcement, to finally prove that the East Area Rapist and the original Night Stalker were the exact same man. Between 1974 and 1986, the man later confirmed as Joseph James DeAngelo is linked to at least 13 murders and more than 50 rapes across 10 California counties, along with over 100 burglaries. His pattern relies on careful surveillance beforehand: cased homes, studied routines, entry through unlocked windows or doors, and on a level of physical control during attacks that homicide investigators later note is consistent with law enforcement or military training. This channel will not describe the specifics of what happened to his victims. What matters for the record is the scale and the method. A single offender moving between jurisdictions that didn't share information efficiently in the 1970s and 80s, exploiting exactly that gap for over a decade. Task forces in both Northern and Southern California work the case for years without knowing they're chasing the same person. DNA testing, still in its infancy through the 1980s, isn't sophisticated enough yet to conclusively link crime scenes hundreds of miles apart. That connection isn't scientifically confirmed until 2001, using DNA technology that didn't exist when the crimes were committed. By the 2010s, investigators have a full genetic profile of the killer. What they don't have is a name, and traditional DNA databases, built entirely from convicted offenders, come back with nothing. The answer, when it finally comes from somewhere no one expected. In April 2018, a team led by Sacramento County investigators uploads the killer's crime scene DNA profile to GEDmatch, a free public genealogy website where users voluntarily upload their own DNA results to find relatives. It isn't a criminal database, it's a hobbyist tool, and its use here becomes the first time this specific technique, genetic genealogy, is used to crack an active criminal case. The DNA doesn't match the killer directly. It matches distant cousins, third and fourth cousins, people with no idea they were related to a serial predator. Investigators build out a family tree from those matches, cross-referencing age, location, and background, and narrow the pool of possible suspects down to one name: Joseph James DeAngelo, a former police officer. DeAngelo had served briefly with the Auburn Police Department in Northern California in the late 1970s, the same years and general region as the East Area rapist attacks, before being fired in 1979 for shoplifting a can of dog repellent and a hammer from a drugstore. To confirm the match without alerting him, investigators covertly collect his DNA from items he discarded in public. First from his car door handle, then from a tissue in his trash, before making an arrest. On April 24th, 2018, DeAngelo is arrested outside his home in Citrus Heights, California. 72 years old, retired, living quietly in the same region where his first known attacks occurred more than 4 decades earlier. The case against DeAngelo moves slowly, complicated by his age and the sheer number of jurisdictions involved. In June 2020, prosecutors from multiple counties agree to a coordinated plea deal. DeAngelo pleads guilty to 13 counts of first-degree murder and admits, on the record, to numerous uncharged rapes and other crimes beyond the statute of limitations to formally prosecute, in exchange for avoiding the death penalty. The plea hearing, held over multiple days in August 2020 because of DeAngelo's age and pandemic-era courtroom restrictions, includes something unusual. Dozens of survivors and victims' family members are given the chance to address him directly and read their statements into the court record, many for the first time in over 40 years. On August 21st, 2020, DeAngelo is sentenced to multiple consecutive terms of life in prison without the possibility of parole. Before sentencing, he addresses the court briefly himself, saying, "I'm truly sorry. The DeAngelo case is the first major criminal prosecution built on investigative genetic genealogy, and it changes how cold cases are worked almost immediately afterward. Within a few years of his arrest, the same technique, cross-referencing crime scene, DNA, against public genealogy databases, is used to help identify suspects in hundreds of other unsolved cases across the country, some decades older than this one. It also raises questions the legal system is still working through, about genetic privacy, about how much law enforcement should be able to do with DNA voluntarily uploaded by people who were never suspects, and about consent in databases built for family history, not criminal investigation. Several states have since passed specific legislation regulating how investigative genetic genealogy can be used. For the survivors and victims' families who waited over 4 decades for a name, the case closed in a courtroom in 2020. For the justice system, it opened an entirely new set of tools and an entirely new set of questions about how far those tools should reach. If you want the next case file, subscribe. New files drop Monday and Thursday.